want to introduce Dennis Barnes. He's going to be doing our presentation today. He's a longtime member of our technical staff out of the Albuquerque, New Mexico area. He does a lot of training, so he has refined his methods over the years, and he's going to show us some of his secrets with regards to how we can design faster, not harder. So without any further comments, I'll turn it over to Dennis, and Dennis, feel free to take it away.
Thanks, Chris. Well, if you guys had read the title of the presentation, basically we're talking about what happens if you have a project that you want to begin. You've kind of planned out how you're going to proceed through your project, but before you get started with the project, usually you gather some of the things that you're going to need, supplies and tools, so that you'll have those handy as you proceed through the project. Now today, I'm going to show you with a little forethought and a few modifications how you can have the tools that you'll need to do most of your design work in SOLIDWORKS with a minimal amount of mouse movement. Okay? So we're going to talk about the 2-inch paradigm. We're going to evaluate some of your favorite tools or the most common tools that you use. Then we're going to make it work for you. All right, so let's talk about the 2-inch paradigm. The 2-inch paradigm says, what's up with this busy screen here? Okay, now you're looking at my SOLIDWORKS screen. I've got all the toolbars up. Believe it or not, the other day when I was helping a customer, I actually saw a screen like this. He had all his toolbars surrounding it, and he had this tiny little graphics area to do his work, and that's the way he was working with it. Now I've got a screenshot here from AutoCAD. It's an older screenshot, but you'll see the tools are still at the edges of the screen. So we want to try to get away from that, okay? So the reason for the 2-inch paradigm is saying we can do most of our modeling within a 2-inch diameter of the existing mouse cursor. Wherever the mouse is, we can use it within the 2-inch radius there, 2-inch diameter. And why? Why do I need this? Well, the reason you need this is that practically every tool that you need is going to be immediately available. And that's just going to speed up your processing and get you to the end that much quicker. Okay? Now, what makes it possible? SOLIDWORKS has done this great thing inside their interface with workflow and feedback and so forth. And we're going to take a look at what makes this possible, okay? So inside SOLIDWORKS 2019, the first thing that makes this possible is what's called mouse pointer feedback. So I'm going to show you guys some things in SOLIDWORKS here real quickly that will help you complete your product here. So I'm going to really quickly, I'm going to go ahead and create a sketch. Got a part here. All of these enhancements here, I'm going to show you how quickly I'm able to use these. Okay, but here's the deal with the mouse pointer feedback, okay? So when I finish my input to this extrude, I want you guys to pay attention to that little icon that's next to my pointer, okay? Let me do it again. We'll bring it back up. Can you guys see that? That's right there next to my pointer. That's a little check mark. That means if I right-click now, I'll finish my process. Okay, now this happens pretty much every time you complete a feature. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and use a fillet. So I created my chamfer there. This is a chamfer. Create the chamfer. Okay, now even though I don't have that icon there, if I right click, I have an OK right here on a right click menu. So even though I don't have that right click icon, I have a right click menu that's really close to my mouse pointer that I can use. Okay. It works really well for fillets. Fillets, if you basically just right-click, it completes the feature. So that's your tool for finishing your features, okay? The right mouse pointer confirm. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and put another sketch on here. I'm going to do a cut. Now I have a line tool that I'm starting, and you'll notice when I move my line tool, the mouse feedback tells me that my line is horizontal. It's a yellow block. That gives me an automatic sketch relation to that previous line. So if I drift away from that, see, I don't have that anymore. If I go out at an angle and I come away from that line, see, this is a perpendicular relationship. So these automatic sketch relationships help me keep my sketch entities in line by reminding me that that automatic sketch relationship is right there next to my pointer. Okay? So that's mouse pointer feedback. Let's talk about the next thing. Optimized workflows. Well, optimized workflows are really great because SOLIDWORKS knows where your next steps are going to be. So let's say I start a fillet. Okay? I'm going to go ahead and go up here to my command manager for right now. Get out of my sketch. We're going to talk about all these things here as we move forward. So I'm going to start with a fillet, but I'm going to go to my full round fillet. I'm going to start with this face. Now the mouse pointer changes now to something a little bit different. It's got a little blue, like a turning signal. What that allows me to do is advance my selection on the left side of the screen in the property manager. So by advancing the selection, I don't have to go back and forth with my mouse pointer to make the selections that I need to select. Once I make the last selection, I have that right-click confirm, and I get the ability to do that. Now, it didn't let me do that because it had the chamfer on there. Let me break that chamfer, and we'll try this one more time. Okay. Yeah, I think you guys get the hint right now, right? Full round fillet, first face right-click, second face right-click, last face right-click, and there's my full round fillet. So that's the workflow, okay? As you look at those mouse pointer feedbacks, the mouse pointer feedback to get your optimized workflow, it's going to help you move through your processes much quicker in your designs. The next thing I want you to look at is the context toolbars that are available inside SOLIDWORKS. The context toolbar comes up every time you click on something. That's this area right here, okay? So there's a lot of tools that are in here automatically. There's an edit feature, edit sketch. There's actually the fillet tool, the chamfer tool. In this case, there's the extrude tool and a couple of extra things that I've added to customize this. And we'll talk about customization later once we get further along in the process. So that's what this in context is about here, is the ability to create features on the fly. So I can start a sketch right for my cut, create a hole, and then get out of that, and there's my hole. So having that in context pop-up makes things really handy for me. Mouse gestures. All right, now you might have seen me use mouse gestures to do some things. The mouse gestures come up when you do a right mouse drag. Okay, so as I've done this, I put my mouse and I did just a little bit of a drag with the right mouse, and you'll see I've got a lot of buttons in this circular toolbar here that as soon as I select one of them, I can actually create another feature. So I'm going to go here to bodies to mirror, select this body, select this face now, and I was able to extend that, double that, by having that feature command on my mouse gestures tools. If I'm in a sketch, I get a different set of mouse gestures. These are sketch tools that are specific to mouse gestures. So there's 4 different mouse gesture tools. There's one for sketches, there's one for parts, there's one for assemblies, and there's one for drawings. Mouse gestures. The last tool that I want to talk about, actually I got one more, and this is the shortcut bar. Okay? The shortcut bar is used using a shortcut key, and we'll talk about those also. But if you use the S key with the shortcut bar, this is what happens when you're in a sketch. When you're in a sketch, you get all these tools. Right now, most of them are sketch tools, but you'll see down at the bottom, these are actually features that I've added to this. This is all fully customizable. Most of these things are fully customizable for you, and we're going to show you how to do that as we move on later down in the presentation. So I exit the sketch, and I go to the S button again, and these are the features that are in my S button to help me create new things. Like I can actually turn on and off axis, I can add an axis, I can do all of these different features from this S button. So it's very similar to the mouse gestures in that you have the multiple contexts for the S button, the shortcut bar. You've got sketches, parts, assemblies, and drawings, and they're all separate, and they don't overlap. They just come up specifically when you're in that particular context. Okay? The last thing I want to talk to you guys about is keyboard shortcuts. If you don't know what the keyboard shortcuts are in SOLIDWORKS, it's really a good idea for you to learn them. I'll show you how to print those off as we get to the customization area, so you can print off a list of all the keyboard shortcuts and keep them in handy for referencing. But a couple of them that I've used so far today, you might already know. Now, the line tool. The line tool uses the keyboard shortcut L. And the great thing about that is when I turn on the line tool, SOLIDWORKS automatically assumes that I want to create a sketch on a new face, and I can start sketching immediately with the line tool. Okay? The next keyboard shortcut that's really handy is the D key. The D key takes whatever's in the confirmation corner, whether it's a feature confirmation or actually to exit the sketch in this case, and it brings it right next to your mouse pointer. The beautiful thing about that is that it's right there next to your pointer every time you need it. Another thing that the D key does is it brings something else called the breadcrumbs. Now, if you look up in the upper left corner here, these things right here, these are the breadcrumbs, and this is actually almost a substitute for the whole feature manager tree, because you can see everything from the sketch all the way up to the part in the different feature manager areas. When you're in assembly, it even shows all of the mates. Okay? The D key brings that right next to your pointer as well. So the D key is very, very powerful. There are shortcut keys for changing your views from all of the regular standard orthogonal views to isometric and going normal to whatever your sketch or your face is. So we're going to talk a little bit more about customization in the shortcut keys, but try to learn as many of those as you can and use them as often as you can. So that's kind of all of the different ways that we have that will help us use what's already there. These are things that are already there inside SOLIDWORKS. If all we do is learn what's already set in place for us, we're going to save a ton of time and just minimize that mouse motion. So let's look forward here as to how we plan this, okay? In our processes every day, we use tools over and over and over again. One example is the dimension tool. I use the dimension tool for every single sketch that I create, and I create a sketch for practically every feature. So I'm using that dimension tool over and over again. So I want to make sure that that's one of the tools that's on one of these shortcuts that is next to my mouse pointer, whether it's the mouse gestures, the shortcut key, keyboard shortcut, or even that in-context pop-up. So we need to kind of evaluate the tools that we use most often in our workflow, okay? If we're not using sheet metal very much, we don't need to have sheet metal tools on our toolbar. So let's take a look at the tools that we use the most often. In sketching, we use a lot of these tools pretty regularly. I use the line tool, the rectangle tool, and the circle tool more than practically anything else. I use the trim tool and the convert entities and the offset entities quite a bit. Okay, so these are tools that I use a lot. In my features, what are the favorite features? What features do I use to create the designs that I'm working with every single day? Now, these are going to be different for every single industry and every single individual that's working on their desk. Do I use surfacing tools? Are these things that I do to help create organic structures or organic looking things in my models for modifications of other people's models? The surfacing tools are really great if you do an import from other CAD software, because it allows you to do modification. So what we need to do is figure out what's missing. Of the tools that we use the most often, what kind of tools are missing from the advantages that we've been taking care of, right? The shortcut bar, the mouse gestures, the keyboard shortcuts and stuff like that. So we need to evaluate what's missing from that as we do that evaluation. So the next thing we're going to talk about as we move forward here is how do we organize our tools. We don't want to put duplicates. I don't want to put the line tool in my mouse gestures and in my shortcut bar and in my pop-up, because the line tool is right there on the L button. So why would I want to duplicate that? So I got to get some organization involved with my tools. So here's an example of what not to do. All right, I've got this box in my garage and it's got all of my screwdrivers. I can't even tell which kind of screwdriver is which from this box. And what we want to end up with is something that looks more like this. I really wish my garage looked like this. I have a bad habit of not putting my tools away after I use them, but SOLIDWORKS keeps that set up for me automatically. So how do we make it work for you? Okay? What do we need to do? Well, we need to take a look at the context-sensitive toolbar. That's going to be some things that we use more often than anything else. So how do we do that? Well, let's take a look at it. We'll go back to SOLIDWORKS. We'll go ahead and click on something so that we get the context-sensitive toolbar. We're going to right-click on that, and we're going to select Customize. Now you'll notice inside the graphics area here, what it talks about is the graphics area toolbar, most of the buttons are grayed out. Okay, and because they're context sensitive, they're going to change depending on whether you're in a part, assembly, a sketch, a drawing. Like you can't edit a feature if you're inside of a sketch. So this context is going to change depending on where you're at and where you're doing your tools. These tools are going to pop up and be available wherever you're doing your work. Now, unless they're not available, like if they were grayed out for some reason, they wouldn't even show up here. So you'll see I've got these three tools here. I just drag them off, and they're gone. And I go back, click OK, and now they don't show up on my toolbar anymore. Now, the great thing about SOLIDWORKS is that some of them are there kind of automatically. So if I click on this part, it puts it back. See that contour? It actually put that extrude back in there for me so that I can use that very quickly. All right, so let's talk about how to get them back in there. We'll talk about Customize again. Basically, here's what you want to do. Here's the commands. It pops up and gives you all the different commands. So the first thing you need to do is learn what the icons mean. We get that from our command manager. So our command manager is really handy because it gives us the names of all the different tools that we can put up there. So we can click on the features, we can see the names of them, and we can add them into our tools. We don't want to drag them off of here because they come away from the command manager. So we want to put that back. I don't want to mess with my command manager, but I might want to search and find it somewhere else. Now I can go through here, or I can go up here and search for cut. See, and I can see what the icon is, and I can go in here and I can look under my features and see which icon is my cut. Okay? Now, it's a good idea to stay away from the flyout toolbars because the flyout toolbars are drop downs. So if I brought this extruded cut into here, you'll see that there's a drop down here. So that means I have to click twice. So I click on the icon to start the drop down, and then I click again to select my tools. So I like to stay away from these flyout toolbars, and I like to go straight to the features toolbars. And then I just take the feature and I drop it right there. So the cut tool is pretty handy. I use that quite a bit, and the hole wizard tool. Okay? And it doesn't really matter how you organize these. You see this a lot of space. SOLIDWORKS will put it back together for you automatically. So as long as you don't keep this from putting too many things in here, you're golden, good to go. You can put in view changes and all kinds of stuff in here. Any tool that you want can go into the in context toolbar or the context sensitive pop-up bar. Next, we have mouse gestures. So the best way to get to mouse gestures is to go up to your options, drop down the options key, select customize, and then you'll see all of these tabs that are here. Click on the mouse gestures tab and you get this mouse gesture guide. Now, mouse gestures right now, you have this drop down here to say how many mouse gestures do I really want to see. If I don't need 12, then that's kind of hard to hit. It's kind of hard to hit those buttons. Sometimes you miss them because they're kind of close together. So you may want to drop down to 4 or 8, okay, or even 3. So this is how you set up these mouse gestures. Once you get them set the way you want and you have the tools, so in this area what you do is you search for the tool that you need. So if I want to put something on here like swept something, so there's a swept flange. Let's see, sweep. So now I have a couple of different sweeps here. So I've got a surface sweep, a cut sweep, and a boss sweep. So I'm going to take this surface sweep and I'm going to drop it. Oh, look, it's already there. Just drop it right there. If I want to drag this off of here, this becomes open, and I can take and drop a regular sweep on there. Okay. This is my cut with surface. That's a pretty handy tool. Let me go to 4 now. Once I go to 4, those stay there and something else shows up. This is a revolved cut. So I don't want to do a revolved cut. Maybe I'll put in the surface sweep. So now I've modified my mouse gestures. I can print those off and keep them next to my computer, my monitor there, maybe tape it to the side or something. And I can see all of those mouse gestures until I learn them by heart. Because once you make the change, you're going to forget. Where did I put that? It's not as easy to see in every single case. So you're going to be looking around, turning on your mouse gestures. Where did I put that button? Did I put it here? Did I put it there? Is it on my shortcut bar? Where did I put it? So learning where you put the tools is another thing. You're going to have to print that off and remember, try to remember where that is. Okay, so that's mouse gestures. I love that. That's one of my favorite tools there. You can turn it off if you don't think you need it. The shortcut bar. All right, same place. We go to Options, Customize. We go to Shortcut Bars. Remember, I told you that every single bar had 4 different options here. So you click on each bar, and you see the shortcuts for each of the different bars. So this was Part, this was Assembly, this is Drawing, and this is Sketch. Okay, now if I want to move something from one place to another, the great thing about the Command Manager is I can use it kind of as a temporary docking location. So if I have something here, like the Hole Wizard, and I want to move it to my Sketch toolbar, okay, then what I can do is I can turn on my Sketch toolbar and then drag the Hole Wizard down off the Command Manager and put it right here. I love the Command Manager because I use it for a docking location. I leave it on all the time. I hardly ever use it because I have my mouse gestures set up and I have my shortcut bars set up to be able to use all of these shortcuts. Okay? The same thing happens, like I said, with the flyout toolbars. You end up with the drop down. Okay? So that's just an extra click. That's why I said to avoid that. So what we do is we just go to our features, and now inside of my Sketch shortcuts bar or my Assembly shortcut bar, I can add these features in here. Okay, now a lot of times what I want to do is I want to go to the Assembly tab and use the Assembly features, because if I'm using Assembly shortcuts, I don't want to put in regular features. I want to use Assembly type features. Okay, so those are the shortcuts for the assemblies. All right, same thing with drawings. You'll see it's kind of short there, and they're all drop down. So I would probably drag all those off and start again. Whatever I need to use in the drawings, I want to put there. Okay. Also, like I said, don't conflict with what's going on with your mouse gestures. So for my drawings, this is what I have for drawings. For my shortcut bar, this is what I have for drawings. So don't create this duplication, this redundancy, because it'll just slow you down. Because which one do I want to use? You'll get confused. Try to avoid that confusion at all costs. Okay. So there's their shortcut bars. Let's talk about keyboard shortcut keys. Best way to get to the keyboard shortcuts is the same way. Customize, the tab Keyboard. All right? Now, if you print a list, it'll send a list of all the keyboard shortcuts to your printer. That'll print this entire list, which includes keyboard shortcuts that are not there. So this is what happens when you print. So be careful with this. What you want to do here is you want to only show the commands that have keyboard shortcuts. So now that you've got that list there, now is a good time to print, because it prints every single keyboard shortcut that's available. This is a handy little guide to have all these keyboard shortcuts. Okay? So if I wanted to add a keyboard shortcut, let's say I wanted one, I actually have added one here called View Planes, which I added during our Essentials class because I wanted to be able to see all of my planes when I wanted to create a sketch. So I wanted to view all the primary planes. So what I did was I searched on View Plane, I brought up View Primary Planes, and then I gave it just the P key. Now be careful about using extra keyboard shortcuts like the Shift P, or stay away from the numeric keypad, because that's going to give you issues, okay? If you want to add control keys, that's a good thing, but there's a lot of control keys already assigned. And you saw there was an error there because I pushed a button and it said that the key was already assigned. Okay, well, what do you want to do? No, I'm just going to say no, and I'm going to stay with the P key. And then I'm going to click OK. Now, when I use the P key, all of my orthogonal planes show up, and any additional planes that I create. So I could hit, I don't know, some other combination. Control and Alt are really handy because they're on the left side of your keyboard, and if you got your hand on your mouse, it's good to create keys that are not all across the keyboard for you. Makes things a little bit easier. Minimal motion is the idea. So the last thing I want to talk to you guys about is the right-click menus. Most of the time, we end up using these right-click menus, but we end up using these long ones that are going to give us problems, okay? So what I like to do is I like to kind of stay away from the right-click menus. What I like to do is when I'm doing something like adding a feature, like a fillet, okay, if I don't have that right-click confirm set up, what I can do is I get a right-click and it gives me a shorter customization here of my menu, okay? If I'm in a feature like an extrude, I'm going to go ahead and edit this extrude here. It's important that you guys understand that when you're creating these features, the right-click menu gives you some of the controls that you might have if you go to the left side of the screen using the property manager. So I can reverse the direction, I can change this to a mid-plane extrusion, I can add a secondary direction, and I can actually even complete the extrude. Okay? Now by changing the direction there and making it a mid-plane, I lost the surface that my cut extrude was on, so I would have to select that from the pop-up menu and put a new face on there for that. So it failed, probably because I'm doing it the wrong direction. So I look at my preview. Yep, it's going the wrong direction. Reverse the direction. Okay. The cut was not in the model, so let's move it. So these kind of troubleshooting things are always really great for you guys to be able to have. Most of the stuff happens with the right click. Okay? A lot of the tools that you see either in the pop-up, the context pop-up, are also going to be available in the right-click menu. Now the right-click menus are all fully customizable. So if you go to the very bottom of the menu and you select Customize, these are going to be your right-click menus. Now you can't really add to them, but you can add in options that are not available right now. So you see these that are unchecked? I could add this as a face to delete face on this menu. So now when I right-click, I can see delete face. So I could delete that front face there. So that's just a little bit of customization that's available with the right-click menus. So what I'd like to do now, I've taken up about 30 minutes, a little over 30 minutes. I'd like to go ahead and entertain any questions that you might have about how to do this. And I might re-show you what I did. I went through it kind of fast, so I want to make sure everybody has a full understanding of how to do the customization, where to put the tools, how to get them here and there and find them for the next 10 or 20 minutes if we have that much time, okay? That's a great comment that just came up in the chat window. It talked about mapping the S key to a button on a 3D mouse. So if you have those kinds of accessories, I tend to work with a 5-button mouse. Okay, so I have my left, right, middle, and then I have 2 buttons over my thumb. Okay, and I don't usually map those buttons because I find myself, when I'm helping other people that use a regular 3-button mouse, that's what I find the majority. People using the 3-button mouse. So I show them how to do things with the 3-button mouse. But if you have these advanced accessories like a scroll the balls, or you have one of the 3D mouse command tools, that's also a great tool to use. If you can map those, the thing is you still need to learn them. You need to remember where you put the stuff, and you need to relearn, retrain yourself on where you put those tools. It's like having one of those big toolboxes full of Craftsman tools. Are my metric ones in drawer 3 or drawer 4 or 5? So you don't want to have to be pulling everything open, clicking all the buttons to try to find your tools. You have to learn where those tools are.
Yeah, I like to tell everyone about the Logitech M705. Has some extra buttons on there. It's fairly inexpensive, probably about $40, and you can find it lots of different places. But definitely gives you some more buttons that you can have fun with regards to your shortcuts.
Yeah, it's all about personal style. And that's what I talked about earlier. You know, you just get it organized with the tools that you have in front of you. If you have a personal style where you like using the 3-button mouse, I use a regular 5-button mouse that's wireless. So it works really well for me.
But, April 18th is our next webcast. It's called SOLIDWORKS Drawing, Automation, and Setup, Utilizing Parametric Best Practices. This was a SOLIDWORKS World presentation that we delivered this past February. So if you want to learn how to link data you've already created into your drawing, that can certainly speed up a lot of documentation stuff that you're having to work with. Also work with some templates, and then specifically with some things related to assemblies and drawing automation. So sign up on our website for that if that sounds like another way that you could save some time, kind of build on this topic. So you'll be saving all kinds of time by the time you get done with that webcast.
So I did have one more tip. I didn't put it in because I was afraid I might run out of time, but this is a great tip. So I told you that we had this context-sensitive toolbars, right? When we do the customization, we have context-sensitive shortcut bars. Now, right now, most of the tools that I have on here are about solids. I got one surfacing tool on here. Other than that, everything is about solids. Well, what if you do designs where you're moving from solids to sheet metal to weldments or other industries, right? You might want those tools to be available. Well, if your toolbar starts to grow and grow, what's the point, right? You're still moving across the screen because your toolbar is so large. But what you can do is if you close all the files in SOLIDWORKS, okay, and you go to the home page here, you can use this tool called Copy Settings Wizard. And the Copy Settings Wizard will allow you to save the settings that you have here. And you can set up just specific settings for your toolbars, your keyboard shortcuts, and your mouse gestures. So if all I did was save just these 4 things here, it would let me have that in a specific place. So if I save this, I'm going to call this Advanced. So this is Advanced 2019. Okay. When I click Finish, all of that stuff gets saved there. Well, let's say I need some customization. I go through my analysis of when I'm doing another industry type modeling like sheet metal, and I put a bunch of sheet metal shortcuts on my shortcut bar. Well, what I'm going to do there is I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to go back. I'm going to save using the copy settings, but this time when I'm ready to use those, I can click on Restore Settings, and I browse to a place where I might have some registry files saved. Let me show you where I have them. So I have multiple versions. Since I'm an instructor, I have multiple versions of multiple different types of registries, settings that I've saved over the years. Okay? Demo settings or sheet metal, surfacing, weldments, the essentials classes for when I teach. I want them to be the same as all the students' machines. So I've saved all these and I can get to them very, very quickly. So if I do, even if I bring up something that's old, like 2015, and I click Next, I don't want the system options. I don't want any menu customization. All I want is these things right here. So it says that the Command Manager tabs have changed. So those are going to be a little bit different. So now when I create a new part and I look at my S key, it's got some different tools on it. See, these are all the sheet metal tools. So that's just one way to help maximize your organization there for your tools and get to them very, very quickly, making the most of those shortcut bars and mouse gestures.
Looks like we got a question related to what shortcuts do you use in drawing. So maybe throw one of those up there real quick, or pull up your custom.
Yeah, let me bring up a drawing. I have a drawing that I was working on earlier today. So I was trying to work on a customer that was having some issues with their hole callouts. But in the drawings, these are all the shortcuts that I have set for my drawings. So I have hole callouts, I have auto balloons, tables. I can crop views, break view, auxiliary views. Most of the stuff is about either, if I hide a bunch of annotations that got imported, I can click on that and it'll just bring them back up. So once another one that's really handy is the model items tool, but that's on the pop-up. So when I do model items, it automatically brings in all of my dimensions. So pay attention to what's in there, because that in context pop-up, it allows me to create projected views. Lots of things here that are available to you when you're paying attention. So ideally here is you got to be paying attention to what's available and what you want to customize and what you want to use.
All right, we got another question here. I think this is a good enhancement request. I'll see what you think, Dennis. But does SOLIDWORKS keep track of which commands you use the most? So, if it could tell you over the past week or month or whatever, you've used these commands the most, that would be helpful in starting to set up your shortcuts. I don't know of a way that SOLIDWORKS does that, but maybe you can comment on that, Dennis.
I've never seen any statistics about the most used, because I think it's very, very personal. Each person has their own style. Each person, they work in different industries. So as an instructor, as an AE here at CATI, I use a lot of different tools because I help a lot of people in different industries. So I'm working with people who are designing in plastic, in metal, in sheet metal, and weldment. So I run the gambit. So it'd be impossible for me to determine which tools I use the most. But there are some pretty common tools that you tend to during the day. I mean, if you started to keep like a little tally sheet, which tool do I use and how often do I use it? Like the line tool. That's very common. People use the line tool a lot. Okay? Some people like to draw rectangles and then trim. So it just depends on the style. So there's as far as I know, there's no other help for how do we collect statistics about the tool usage.
Yeah, I think Scott was asking, would SOLIDWORKS keep that tally sheet for you, right? So
I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't think so either. That's a cool idea, though. Like, you could set your shortcuts based on what you've actually been using.
Keyboard mapping almost, or something like that.
Yeah, like you use the line command, the trim entity, and offset entities, the most over the past. So, okay, well, I'm going to put that on my mouse gesture or shortcut bar or whatever, right? Kind of as a way to identify which of those commands, instead of just trying to, like you were saying, keep yourself a little tick sheet that says, here's how many times I'm using these different commands. SOLIDWORKS would do that in the back. I
bet you that there's some kind of app that would do that for you.
Yeah.
I mean, I downloaded an app. I want to show you guys this. This is pretty funny. I downloaded an app that traces my mouse movement because I thought it might be nice to show what I was.
Yeah, Dan's got a comment like could help us a little bit. Looking at the recent commands, like you could pull that up every so often and maybe see.
Right. That's correct. Recent commands is on the right mouse gesture, the right mouse button. If you go to recent commands here, it tells you what it doesn't keep very many. Yeah. But it does keep and tell you what you're using.
Probably the closest you're going to get right now to anything like that. I think that would be a good idea.
Yeah, I've lost my folder that had that diagram in it. Now, I saw something else on there about asking me to publish my mouse keyboard mapping, etc. I mean, I could put them up on a website, I guess, but I mean, I don't know how much that would help you, because like I said, I do it I have to try to be as many things to as many people as I can. So I don't know how much value that would be for you. It's much more important that you analyze your own style and your own usage to create your own mappings. Actually, probably the best thing to do is send an email to support@cati.com, and then maybe in the subject there, attention Dennis, keyboard shortcuts or mouse gestures or something like that.
There you go.
And that way it'll come to my attention. I'll be able to answer it.
Okay.
That would work out really well. The other question I saw there was, can you add any more than 4 shortcut bars that you've shown us? So the shortcut bars are specifically set up by SOLIDWORKS to be in the context of whatever you're doing, whether you're in a sketch, whether you're in a part, whether you're in an assembly, or whether you're in a drawing. Okay? So I don't know any other context that you might actually be in other than maybe simulation. Maybe if you're in a simulation study, they could create some shortcut bars for a simulation study. That would be a great enhancement. Now, I did submit an enhancement for adding tabs to the shortcut bar. So you could have a shortcut bar that had multiple tabs that might have different toolbars in it. So it would be an overlapping thing, kind of like the command manager, where you have the view layout tab and the annotation tab as part of a little smaller shortcut bar. But I haven't seen any response on that. So
good stuff. Good stuff. Any other questions? I don't have anything from where I'm sitting. Dennis, you got any on your end?
I don't see anything more in the chat area. I appreciate the input, you guys. I love the fact that you guys are being engaged here and giving us some input about using this stuff. Like I said earlier, our support team is available for you guys, support@cati.com. We'll answer your questions in a timely fashion and work with you. I mean, we are your trusted partner.
All right. With that, if there aren't any other things, we'll go ahead and close the webinar. Thanks for your attendance today. Send Dennis a note. Use support@cati.com and just put his name in the subject line. He'd be happy to send you those shortcuts that he's currently using. So thanks for your time today and have a great day.